Welcome to today's lecture. Today's topic is tenderization of meat in continuation to my previous lecture where I have discussed in details about what is tenderness and understanding tenderness and the common practice of aging, the details about the aging process and its role in tenderness of meat. But other than aging, there are many other methods. So today I want to discuss some of the methods which are more commonly used or traditional methods of tenderization. And then another separate lecture I will have, that is about the modern methods of tenderization or some of the advanced methods of tenderization. Before we talk about the tenderization process or tenderization method, once again let us quickly understand about tenderness. In details I have discussed about it in my previous lecture. So tenderness is one of the most important eating quality parameters and which determines the quality of meat to a great extent, and that is why there has been a lot of research related to this tenderness, which is an important palatability factor. And this tenderness varies between meat due to their origin of the species, breed, age, sex, and between muscles. This I have earlier also discussed. So meat from different origin and background will have different tenderness, and it is influenced by the nutritional status of the animal from which the meat comes and also exercise of the specific muscles. So different muscle has got different activity, and with the difference in muscular exercises the tenderness varies. Generally heavy working muscles are will be tough. Another important aspect of tenderness controlled by the connective tissue, which we have mentioned earlier as the background tenderness, that is by the connective tissue. And once the animal ages, there is more cross-link formed in the collagen. Collagen is the main content of the connective tissue and which gives the toughness of meat with the increase of age. So these fibers has an important role also in terms of diameter. The muscle fiber diameter, if it is more, generally it is perceived as comparatively tough. Now let us quickly understand once again about the perception of tenderness. This also I have discussed in the previous lecture in more details. So this is the sensation of tenderness, which is governed by several aspects or several components and which has got varying importance. Generally, we can say subjective perception, that is by human, when we eat, how you feel about the tenderness, and that has got three aspects. That is, one is how easily our teeth can penetrate on the piece of meat after putting in the mouth or while chewing. Second is how easily a meat piece get fragmented, and the third aspect is the how easily we can swallow the meat, and it is governed by number of chews required before swallowing. If the number of chews are more, that means the meat is comparatively tough. The perception of tenderness by human is very difficult to duplicate by machines or scientific instruments. So this I call the objective measurement or objective tenderness, which is done by some machine, and one of the common machine which is used universally is the Warner Brasler shear force. So here the machine is used to shear through a piece of sample and how much force it takes. If the force taken to shear is more, that means it is less tender or tough meat. Similarly, there are some more machines to measure the force for piercing or separation, etc. Here we can see the list of methods for tenderization of meat, of which the first one is conditioning or aging. This I have discussed in details in the first lecture. That is a common practice of aging and how it changes the tenderness. I have discussed in the previous lecture. Then other methods like marination, which is a traditional practice. Then tender stretch method, comparatively scientific practice of modern origin. then tender cut process, mechanical tenderization by developing different kind of machines, and cooking. So these are common methods now practiced for tenderization of meat, and these 5 methods I am going to discuss today in this lecture. Then remaining 4 methods, that is enzymatic tenderization, electrical stimulation, infusion of calcium chloride, and high pressure tenderization. So these 4 are comparatively more advanced or more modern methods, and these 4 I will discuss in details in the next lecture. This is related to conditioning or aging, which we have discussed in details in the previous lecture. So there are dry aging and wet aging I have mentioned. So dry aging means the carcasses are kept in the chill room under air chilling condition, and you can see the carcasses. So generally they are kept around 4 to 7 degrees Celsius, and it is kept for varying time about 10 to 15 days, and in this process there will be slow changes and improvement in the tenderness of meat, and also it improves the flavor and juiciness. So these details we have discussed earlier. This is wet aging, so part of that conditioning practice in a modern meat industry. The large meat cuts are packed with vacuum and hold in chilling room or around below 10 degrees Celsius, and here also slowly there will be changes as we have discussed earlier. So this is not allowing the meat to dry because of the vacuum packaging, so sometimes it is called as wet aging. Now we will discuss about tenderization by marination. Marination is a common practice in our meat processing or meat cooking. So generally after buying the meat in home, we wash it and apply certain ingredients including different kind of spices or salt or vinegar or sometimes curd or lemon juice. So altogether it is mixed nicely and kept for some time either in room temperature or in the refrigerator for a longer period. So this practice helps in better penetration of these ingredients inside and giving better flavor. That's the main purpose for marination. However, it also helps in tenderization. So it can improve the tenderness of meat and also the taste of the meat products or cooked product. The basic ingredients in marinade include salt and acid of vinegar or lemon juice or curd origin, sometimes soy sauce, and several kind of spices depending on the tradition and culture, many kind of spices. So all this salt, acid or some enzymes from the spices can help in the tenderization process. Sometimes a little amount of oil is also applied, and which will come to the surface on the meat pieces, and thereby it gives a fresh and bright appearance, and meat looks longer period of good looking. So that's the basics about the marination. Little more details about the marination, that is a method for tenderization. So here the meat is cut into small pieces or strips to help complete penetration of the marinade or the ingredients in the marinade up to the inside of the pieces, and meat is mixed with marinating ingredients. Either they are used as a powder or it is made into a paste like thing, and then it is applied on the pieces or strips, nicely mixed, and it is kept 4 to 8 hours in the refrigerator for complete mixing and penetration of the ingredients inside the piece. Sometime if it is kept outside in the room temperature, it can be kept up to 30 to 40 minutes or maximum up to 1 hour. The marination tenderizes the meat through the softening of collagen by the salt and hydrolysis of the cross links of the connective tissue. That is, in the connective tissue there is collagen in which there is cross links which cause the toughness of meat. So those cross links are broken either by salt or by other ingredients like acids or alcohols. Here we will talk about salt as tenderizer. So salt has an influence on the tenderness process or tenderization. As we have seen in case of marination, salt is used along with other spices and other ingredients. So here the sodium chloride itself and other salts have a tenderizing action on meat, as we have seen in case of marination. And post-mortem infusion of joints with salt solution has been reported to improve the tenderness of meat. So if we infuse the joints with salt solution, it has been found that it has an effect of improving the tenderness. And this action is mainly due to enhanced water holding capacity. So this infusion increases the water holding capacity, and thereby apparently it improves the tenderness of meat. That is how the salt also plays a role in tenderization of meat. Now about use of phosphate as tenderizer. Use of alkaline polyphosphates has been found to be very effective in improving tenderness, juiciness and overall palatability. So in a modern industry, polyphosphates are commonly used, or it can be used along with the marinades, and it has been found to improve the overall palatability, juiciness and tenderness of spent hen meat or sheep meat or buffalo meat, or all this meat when it is coming from aged animals. The polyphosphates commonly used is sodium pyrophosphate or sodium polyphosphate or tripolyphosphate, and it is used as a solution and it can be injected into meat cuts. So when we have bigger cuts in which we can inject the solution with polyphosphates, or sometimes the pieces can be dipped in solution. So sometimes we make curing solution, in that polyphosphate will be there, and we can keep the pieces dipping as a curing solution for 12 to 48 hours, and that can improve the tenderness, juiciness and overall palatability of meat. Now the third method, relatively modern practice in the meat industry, is the tender stretch method. So stretching a muscle produces tenderizing effect. So normally shortening produces opposite effect, that is toughening of meat. So traditionally after slaughter, the carcass in case of beef is splitted into two halves or sometime in quarter, and these quarters are hanged from the rail. The common practice is halves are hanged from the Achilles tendon through a hook and kept hanging during conditioning. Now what happens? The weight of the carcass put many muscles into tension, so stretching them as they pass into rigor. So when we hang the carcass, there is a stretching effect, and that is the tender stretch method, in which many muscle get a tension, and that causes the stretching of the muscle fibers or the sarcomere, and thereby it reduces the impact of shortening and toughening of meat. In continuation of tender stretch method, this stretching helps to increase sarcomere length, thereby to produce more tender meat. As we have discussed about the structure of muscle fiber, the final unit is the sarcomere, and there is a shortening of sarcomere normally leads to toughening of meat. Now this stretching increases the sarcomere length and the breakage of many joints or the jet line proteins, and that gives better tenderness. But there is a new hanging technique in the modern meat industry where the beef sides are hanged from the H bone instead of Achilles tendon. A modern practice is to hang from the H bone or through the obturator foramina, and this has shown to prevent the muscles of hind limbs from shortening and subsequent toughening. In the common practice where it is hanged from the Achilles tendon, the hind limb muscles found to be shortening and toughening, that can be avoided by a new method of hanging from the obturator foramina or from the H bone. So in this posture, muscles of hind limbs assume a relaxed position, and this process is called pelvic suspension or hip free suspension. In continuation about tender stretch method, the hot beef sides or quarters must be suspended by the edge bone within 1.5 hours of slaughter. So within 1.5 hours, the carcass should be suspended from the edge bone. Now there is a demerit after pelvic hanging, the shape of the carcass becomes odd or unconventional than the carcass when it is hanged from the Achilles tendon. So when we hang from the Achilles tendon, it becomes straight and long, but when it is hanged from the edge bone, the hind leg part stretches separately, so it takes a odd and unconventional shape. So to correct this unconventional shape, what we should do, it can be hanged from the Achilles tendon again for about 24 hours after taking from the edge bone hanging. So first there is a hanging from edge bone, and after the optimum period, it can be again hanged from the Achilles tendon to correct the odd shape. Here in the picture we can see in the left side, that is the more conventional practice, that is hanging from the Achilles tendon, in which the muscles at the hind legs seems to be shortening and toughening. Whereas in the modified practice in the right side, we can see hanging from the edge bone or through the obturator foramina, and sometimes called as pelvic hanging. In this case, the thigh muscles or hind limb muscles will not have that stress, and it will have better impact on the meat quality. So we will see the effect of tender stretch. Actually it improves the tenderness, and the modified method has better effect because it is having more impact on the other parts of the muscles, other parts of the carcass. So the improvement in tenderness of rump, thick flank and strip loin, all the muscles in this region, rump, thick flank and strip loin and Scotch fillet, is said to be equivalent to 3 weeks of aging at 2 degrees Celsius. So this hanging for couple of hours will have the similar impact as aging at 2 degrees Celsius for 3 weeks. Similar improvement in sheep and goat carcasses can be achieved by tender stretch method. So similar effect we can see. We are going to see a picture where we can find the difference in the sarcomere structure due to this stretching and breakage at the jet line. Here we can see the effect of tender stretch in the sarcomere level under microscopic picture. So in the left side we can see the normal hanging, and in the right side the tender stretch method. So we can see that right side there is a reduced eye band length and distorted jet disc. So the jet line is distorted and sarcomere length is increased, and thereby it shows the more impact of the hanging, and there will be better tenderness. Here is another method, that is tender cut process. In this process, tension on individual muscles in a suspended carcass is reduced by selectively severing the bones and ligaments. So in this process, tender cut process, selectively some bones or ligaments are cut or severed. The carcasses are suspended normally from the Achilles tendon, and thus it is easy to implement on commercial slaughter line. So here the hanging is done as per normal practice from the Achilles tendon, and so it is easy in the commercial slaughter line. So cutting of some bones or ligaments is done. That has reduced the tension on the carcass and makes it better tender. When the process is carried out within 45 minutes of slaughter, a significant improvement in tenderness has been noticed both in cattle and pig carcass meats. So if we practice it in immediately after slaughter is over, processing and dressing is over, within 45 minutes, then it has significant impact on tenderizing the meat. It has been found in cattle and pig. Next we will discuss about mechanical tenderization methods. So these are more of scientific machineries developed in the application of meat industry. First one is needle or blade tenderization. Second one is steak maceration. By hammering, we can macerate the muscles and it becomes tender. Then tumbling and massaging, generally they come together. And then cubing, making small cubes by cutting through modern machines. And grinding, that is as good as mincing. Here the muscles, boneless muscles, are ground with modern machines into fine particles. So these are the modern mechanical methods of tenderization, where due to the smaller pieces or other effect the tenderness is achieved. So the first method under the mechanical tenderization is needle or blade tenderization. Here the machines are developed in such a way that large number of needle or blade like needles pierce and cut through the boneless muscles, and that causes a lot of changes by damaging the connective tissue and muscle fibers, and meat becomes tender. So needle or blade tenderization is accomplished by passing the steaks or boneless subprimals through blades and or a bank of needles. A large number of needles or blades that causes the piercing and cutting, and it becomes tender. The blades and or bank of needles pass through the meat, severing connective tissues and muscle fibers, making the meat more palatable and tender. A variable speed conveyor is used to advance the meat. So the meat is passed through a conveyor while the up and down motion of the needle bank penetrates the muscle tissue. So a conveyor carries the boneless muscle, and in a specific place where the needles or blades are there, that pierce the stretch of muscle either as a bank of needle or blades. The best results are obtained when boneless subprimals such as boneless ribeye and boneless top sirloin are used. So these are the lengthy muscle and very easy to get a big strip of boneless muscle, and when it goes through this conveyor, it has got very good effect in this method. Here in this picture we can see there is a large number of needles piercing through a chunk of muscle. So it should be boneless and it will pass through this area, and all the needles will pierce through it and come up and down. So that is how in a modern machinery developed for tenderization of tough meat. Here in this picture we can see the blade tenderization. There is a band of blades in the top in the picture, and the boneless strips of muscle pass through it, and large number of blades will pierce through it, and thereby it cause damage to the connective tissue fibers and other proteins and muscle fibers, damaging the Z-line proteins. So thereby it makes a nice effect and causing the tenderness of the meat. Under the mechanical methods, this is another method, that is tumbling and massaging. So these are two different things but generally done simultaneously or synchronously together. So generally tumbling and massaging are used synergistically with marination for better and faster penetration of the marinade and uniform distribution of cure and simultaneous improvement in tenderness. So in the modern curing system, the curing solution is kept in the drum, that is tumbling and massaging drum, in which the curing solution and along with the meat pieces are kept, and it is massaged through the hands inside and repeated falling by the rotation of the drum. So here sometime a macerator can be used for tenderizing the individual loin, sirloin or round sticks. However, it is more often to make cubed steaks from less tender portions of the carcass such as chuck. So some portion of the carcass like shoulder part, the meat will be very tough. So from this portion cubes are made, and those cubes are kept in tumbling and massaging to make them tender, and then from that steaks are made. Sometimes these pieces are cured through this tumbling and massaging, and that helps in extraction of proteins. And finally all those cured pieces are put into molds and closed with tight pressure. So thereby we can create a new structure, sometime we call ham, and this kind of products are called restructured products. So this tumbling and massaging also used in restructuring, but it helps in the tenderization. Here we can see the machineries that is for tumbling and massaging and their inner structure. In the bottom right, we can see big drums in which the meat pieces or chunks will be kept along with curing solution, and it keep on rotating. Whereas in the top picture, we can see there are different kind of structures which helps in massaging by their rotation, and that is how it helps in tenderization and also in extracting the proteins. Here again we can see the modern large size machineries for the massaging of large meat cuts, where the bones are removed and the whole chunk of big muscles are passing through the big structure, in which there will be both piercing and massaging effect, and thereby making the meat more tender. Here is another technique under the mechanical tenderization, that is the cubing, making the cubes from the boneless chunk of meat. So nowadays there are very high-tech machineries in which if we keep a chunk of meat, big portion, boneless, it will automatically cut into cubes. So that's a modern industrial application. So it is another means of mechanical tenderization, that is cubing, where the small blades of a cuber simply sever connective tissue in boneless retail cuts to break the tissue into smaller pieces. So when large cut of muscle is passing through, it is making smaller cubes, so it is cutting all the connective tissue and other parts, and thereby it makes an effect of tenderness. The last method in this category of mechanical tenderization is the grinding or mincing. So here the machines are developed where the boneless pieces are passed through this machine and it is ground into smaller particles. So this is the grinding or mincing. It is a modern machinery developed, but not so new. It is almost, these techniques are almost 100 years old, but last 30, 40 years we have got very high-tech and efficient machineries. Here the boneless pieces are passing through this machine and they are cut into very fine particles, and we can decide the particle size by using the plates with different size of holes, that is the sieve-like plates, like 3 mm, 6 mm, 9 mm, like that. And nowadays when we make different kind of comminuted products, meat products, that time also meat is ground like in this system of mincer, and then it goes to further fine cutting in bowl chopper to make the emulsion. So this grinding reduces the toughness, and this ground meat can be sold as keema nowadays we say, or minced meat, but this meat also goes for making products. Now we are at the last method to be discussed today, that is the cooking, and other methods we are going to discuss in the next lecture. But as we know, cooking is not just a method, it is an essential requirement for eating meat, but the cooking plays a lot of role in the tenderization of meat, and it has got two contrasting roles related to tenderness of meat. The first is about the contractile proteins, that is the actin and myosin. To a great extent, the myofibrillar protein, the major part of myofibrillar protein of meat, become less tender due to coagulation during cooking process. So during cooking, since the temperature goes above 60 degree, the myofibrillar proteins, especially the actin and myosin, becomes less tender due to coagulation, whereas it has got a very favorable action on the connective tissue protein. So as we have discussed in the structure of muscle, the muscle has got large amount of connective tissue protein like epimysium, perimysium and endomysium. All of them are made up of collagen, which has got collagen fiber. Now all this collagen get converted to gelatin during cooking. When the temperature goes above 60 degree, all this collagen get converted to gelatin, and then it becomes very soft and good texture for eating. So that's how the cooking plays a major role for tenderization of meat. Now in continuation about cooking, so such cuts like steaks and chops from the ribs and loin are low in connective tissue. So when the cuts are having low in connective tissue, then role of cooking is less in tenderization. Rather, it will have an adverse effect due to the coagulation of contractile protein. So in such case, dry heat cooking is preferred, like pan frying, broiling, roasting or barbecuing, because all these methods are done very quickly. Here the dry heat raises the temperature very quickly to develop the flavor of meat, and the contractile proteins won't get much time for creating that less tender effect. So all this meat where there is less connective tissue should be cooked by dry heat cooking. In continuation about cooking, the moist heat cooking such as braising is recommended for cuts like foreshank, round and chuck, which are having high amount of connective tissue. So the shoulder region and thigh region having more active muscles with more connective tissue, and that makes the tough meat. So in such case, moist cooking, especially braising where it is cooked with steam and water, so that is more suitable, because application of moist heat for a long time at low temperature converts collagen into gelatin and makes the meat tender. So all the toughness due to connective tissue is resolved through this moist heating and by converting the connective tissues or collagen into gelatin. Tenderness is also affected by degree of doneness. So we are going to talk more that there are different degree of doneness that makes a difference in the tenderness. And as we have told earlier, when the lean is heated, the contractile proteins toughen and moisture is lost and tenderness is decreases. That we have already mentioned earlier. Here we can see the degree of cooking or degree of doneness and its relation with tenderness. Broadly, it is here three categories. There are some more category we are going to see later. So broadly, rare degree of doneness, medium degree of doneness and well done. So rare done, medium done and well done. The rare done is around 60 degrees Celsius temperature, that is the inside the muscle or meat, where it is more tender than the medium doneness. Whereas the medium degree, it is around 68 degrees Celsius internal temperature, and this has got more tender effect than the well done. And the well done is, that means very well cooked, where the internal temperature reaches 77 degrees Celsius, but it will be comparatively less tender than medium done. So this is the difference. More the doneness, less is the tenderness. So that's why in the Western countries they prefer low cooking around 60 degrees Celsius, that is the rare doneness. Then that gives better tenderness of meat. In this one, we will talk more about the effect of cooking on flavor. The degree of doneness is important for beef because some people like flavor of well done beef than rare done. So well done gives a better flavor, but the tenderness will be less, whereas rare done gives better tenderness but less flavor. Beef with little marbling requires less cooking time than higher grade of beef. So if the marbling is more, then the cooking required more, because inside the intramuscular fats are more, so it takes more time to reach the temperature. Whereas if it is less marbling, then it can achieve this temperature more in less time. Pork is cooked to 70 to 77 degrees Celsius internal temperature for desirable flavor and production of trichina free meat, as trichina dies at around 61 degrees Celsius. It is usually recommended to cook lamb to well done category. So well done means around 70 to 77 degrees Celsius for desirable flavor. So in case of lamb, the better cooking or higher temperature is required for better flavor. In this picture, we can see the effect of cooking and tenderness, and it seems overcooking slowly reduces the tenderness, which we have discussed earlier. So earlier we have discussed only three category of doneness or degree of doneness, that is rare, medium and well done. But here we can see another three category, that is very rare, rare, medium, well done, and very well done. So we can see from very rare to very well done, the last one right side, it appears comparatively tough because of the very high temperature, which is around 80 degree and above. So that causes more coagulation in the myofibrillar proteins, especially contractile proteins, and makes the more toughness. Now we are at the end of today's lecture. Today we have discussed overall about the tenderization method. So first we have briefly discussed about the understanding of tenderness and perception of tenderness, and then we have briefly discussed about the all different methods. There are almost 10 methods, of which the most common practice is aging, which is followed in the industry. So that we have discussed in the previous lecture. After that we have discussed some of the common practice like marination, and then we have discussed about the tender stretch and tender cut method, which is followed nowadays in the industry. And we have discussed about the modern machineries used, that is the mechanical methods. There are several aspects like tumbling, massaging, piercing or blade tenderization, and grinding or cubing. And finally we have discussed about the cooking, because cooking is the final compulsory procedure for eating meat. So cooking also plays important role in the tenderization, particularly for the connective tissue. So in case of meat from whole animal or meat from highly working muscles or shoulder and thigh muscles are having more connective tissues, so such meat needs cooking at a higher temperature or moist heat method, where the collagens get converted to gelatin and makes it tender. However, in case of less working muscle, it is better to have lower temperature cooking, because the myofibrillar protein, especially the contractile proteins, has a negative impact on cooking, especially at high temperature. Because of the coagulation, myofibrillar proteins appears to be tough, so it increases the toughness of meat. So with this I am concluding today the half a part of the tenderization method. In the next lecture I am going to discuss the other methods which are more advanced. About 4 methods I will discuss in details in the next lecture. Thank you.